I met Audrey on a rainy Thursday afternoon, which already felt like a strange setup for something romantic. I was sitting in a small coffee shop downtown, halfway through editing a bland marketing proposal when she asked if she could sit at my table. The place was packed, her voice was soft, and her smile disarming. She had dark auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, an old army jacket that looked like it had seen war, and the kind of eyes you don't forget, like overcast skies. Pale, deep, searching. Sure, I said, pushing my laptop aside. She sipped her tea in silence for a few minutes, then asked if I believed in déjà vu. That's how it started. Over the next hour, we talked about memory, dreams, and whether time was just a trick our brains played to stop us from losing our minds. I never got her number. She didn't offer it. But the next day, she was there again. Same place, same seat. We fell into a rhythm. We never texted or called. I didn't even know her last name. But she showed up every day at 4:30 p.m., rain or shine. We'd sit, sip coffee, and talk about the world like we were strangers on a train that would never stop. Audrey. That's what she told me her name was. No social media, no business card, no history. When I asked what she did, she'd just smile and say, "I'm between things." 2 weeks in, I was hooked. She was funny in this quiet, dry way, like someone who knew more than she let on but didn't feel the need to prove it. She was beautiful too, but not in an obvious, Instagram filter way. She was still, like silence in a room full of noise. The strange thing is, and I didn't notice this until later, nobody ever talked to her except me. The baristas never greeted her. No one ever bumped into her. Once, a guy walked right past our table, and his elbow passed through the hem of her coat like she wasn't there. But I didn't register it then. Not until she invited me to her apartment. Her building was old. The kind of place with creaky staircases and mailboxes with names scratched off. We walked up 5 flights to a door with no number on it. She unlocked it with a brass key and pushed it open. No lights. Inside, the walls were covered in old newspaper clippings, hundreds of them, all yellowed and curling at the edges. No furniture, just a mattress in the middle of the floor and a desk with a typewriter on it. "I write things," she said, noticing my look. "Like stories. Like memories," she whispered. She didn't elaborate. We sat on the mattress and talked about dreams again. She told me about one where a man kept knocking at her door at night. But when she looked through the peephole, she saw herself. Only older. And angry. I told her I'd had similar dreams, but I was lying. I just didn't want to break the intimacy. She leaned in then, slowly, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed. And we kissed. That was the first time I touched her. Her skin was cold. Not chilly, but cold, like porcelain left in the freezer. I thought maybe she was just nervous. But even when we held hands later, the cold didn't go away. Things got stranger after that. The more I saw her, the less real she seemed. One night, I followed her after she left the coffee shop. I just wanted to see where she went. That's all. It wasn't creepy, at least that's what I told myself. She walked to the cemetery. Not to a grave. Just through it. Slowly. Like she was looking for something that didn't want to be found. She didn't notice me. Or maybe she did and didn't care. The next day, I asked her about it. "People rest there," she said. "But not all of them stay asleep." Then she changed the subject. One rainy morning, I went to the library. I don't even know why. Maybe part of me already knew something was off, and I was chasing ghosts. I searched her name, Audrey. No last name, nothing to narrow it down. I tried all kinds of keywords. Then I searched obituaries. Just for fun. That's when I found it. The photo was old, maybe 15 years. But the face was hers. Audrey K. Marin, 1990 to 2012. Died in a house fire. No survivors. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just similar. It was her. The same eyes. The same soft lips. Even the bun in her hair. My hands were shaking. I printed it out and went to her apartment. I didn't knock. I just walked in. The mattress was gone. The walls were bare. And the room smelled like smoke. I stood in Audrey's apartment for what felt like hours. No clippings. No typewriter. No trace of her. Just an empty room with floors that creaked when you breathed too hard. The windows were shut tight. The dust in the corners didn't look disturbed, like no one had stepped inside for years. But I had been here. With her. I touched the spot where the mattress used to be. Cold. Like the floor held the memory of someone who no longer existed. The obituary printout crumpled in my fist. I pulled out my phone and called the number for the landlord, which I had found online through a rental listing from years ago. To my surprise, someone answered. Yeah? What unit? Apartment 5B, I said. I'm trying to reach the tenant. Pause. 5B's been empty for years, the man said slowly. No one's lived there since the fire. My blood froze. The fire? Yeah. Some squatter. Real tragedy. They say she never made it out. I didn't say anything. Just thanked him and hung up. That was impossible. I had just seen Audrey the day before. She'd held my hand. Kissed me. She couldn't be. But the obituary. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. One new message. You shouldn't have gone there. My throat tightened. I texted back. Audrey. No response. I waited. Minutes passed. Then, image received. It was a photo, taken from across the street. My apartment. My window. The curtains pulled back. And me, lying in bed, staring at the phone. Someone had just taken a photo of me from outside. I jumped up and ran to the window. The street was empty. Except, there was a shadow across the road. Just standing still. Too far to make out a face. But I knew it was her. She didn't wave. Didn't move. Just stared. And then she was gone. I started digging. Not just into her obituary, into everything. Fire records. Property listings. Death certificates. Police reports. What I found didn't make sense. Audrey K. Marin had died in 2012 in a fire that started in her apartment. Gas leak, they said. But the report also noted something else. Multiple unconfirmed reports of the deceased seen after the incident. Case remains closed. I even found an old Reddit post from someone who lived in the building below her, posted 6 years ago. Sometimes at night, I hear a typewriter above me. But that apartment's been empty since the fire. I went up once. The room was cold and filled with newspaper clippings. When I came back the next day, it was bare. That wasn't coincidence. That was Audrey. But what was she? The next day, I went back to the coffee shop. She was there. Like nothing had happened. Same seat. Same tea. Same worn jacket. I stared at her. What are you? She blinked slowly. You found it, didn't you? You're dead. Does that change how you feel? I didn't answer. She reached across the table and touched my hand. It was freezing, colder than ever. My skin stung under her fingertips. I don't want to hurt you, she whispered. Then what do you want? Her eyes met mine. To remember. The wind outside howled. The door to the shop creaked open and closed again. But no one walked in. You don't belong here, I said, barely able to breathe. She smiled. Neither do you. That night, I heard the knock. At first, I thought I dreamed it. But then I heard it again. Knock. 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 I got up and opened the door. No one there. But on the floor sat an envelope. No writing. Just sealed in wax. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single newspaper clipping. Yellowed and torn at the edges. A photo of me. Missing. Local man disappears after questioning death of woman in apartment fire. Last seen at cemetery. There was no date on it. No article. Just the headline. And the photo. Of me. But I hadn't gone missing. I was right here. Wasn't I? I looked in the mirror. For a second, just a split second, my reflection didn't move. It stared back at me with empty eyes and a cold smile. Then it followed. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't trust what might happen if I closed my eyes. I stayed up, lights on, every mirror covered. I ripped the newspaper clipping into pieces, flushed them, burned what I could. But still, something felt off. Not just with Audrey. With me. That morning, I looked through my camera roll. Hundreds of photos. But not a single one of her. No selfies. No images from the cafe. No videos. Not even a reflection in a window. Just empty chairs. My hand reaching across a table toward nothing. It was like she had edited herself out of my life. Except I still remembered her. Didn't I? I went to the coffee shop again the next day. She wasn't there. I waited until closing. Nothing. So I left. Or tried to. As I stepped outside, I noticed something strange. The street was silent. No cars. No people. The world looked paused. Like a photo. And then someone whispered in my ear. Only it wasn't a voice I heard. It was like the thought just appeared in my head. You're unraveling. I turned. Audrey stood behind me. Only, it wasn't her. She looked the same. But her eyes were wrong. Not cold anymore. Not soft. Black. Wide. Endless. She smiled. and the world bent around her like heat off pavement. You weren't supposed to remember me, she said. But you did. That's why this is happening. What is? I whispered. Decay. I don't know how I got home that night. I remember walking through streets that didn't look like mine. Lampposts that stretched too tall. Sidewalks that sloped downward like tunnels. People with blurred faces staring without eyes. And behind them, always behind them, her. Audrey. Watching. When I finally got back to my building, my key didn't fit the lock. Because the number on my door had changed. It now read 5B. I hadn't lived in 5B. Audrey had. I turned the knob. It was unlocked. And inside was her apartment. Just as I remembered it the first time. Mattress on the floor, typewriter clicking by itself, walls covered in clippings. The air reeked of smoke and mold. And there, sitting cross-legged on the bed, was Audrey. You're already here, she said. You just haven't caught up yet. I shook my head. I don't belong here. She tilted her head. You were never supposed to see the clipping. What does that even mean? She stood and walked over to me. Her form flickered, like an old VHS tape losing signal. You remembered me, she said. That's all it takes. For what? For me to stay. I ran. Down the stairs. Through the door. Into the street. And stopped. Everything was dark. Not night. Just absence. Like someone had turned the world off. The buildings were silhouettes. The sky was a blank smear. And in the distance, I saw shapes, dozens of them, standing still, all facing me. I turned to go back into the building. It was gone. Just a wall of concrete where the door had been. Panic took over. I ran, through fake streets, past fake trees, toward the only light I could see. A flickering neon sign. The coffee shop. Only now it looked wrong. No lights inside. Windows blacked out. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, Audrey sat at our table. She gestured to the empty seat across from her. I sat down. Where am I? I asked. She looked sad. You're in the echo. What's that? The place people go when memory is louder than death. She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a story. Typed. On old parchment. The title read, The Boy Who Dated the Dead. I skimmed the first few lines. It was my story. Word for word. Meeting her. The apartment. The obituary. All of it. And at the bottom, in red ink. This version doesn't end well. Try again. I looked up. She was gone. And I was sitting in an empty room, surrounded by mirrors. And in every mirror, I saw a different version of myself. One smiling. One screaming. One burning. And one with black eyes. A voice behind me. You picked the wrong reflection. I turned. Audrey again. But her face was melting, slow, like wax. And underneath, there was no skull. Just paper. Newspaper. With words that crawled like insects. Stop, I whispered. But she only smiled. You loved a memory, she said. And now you've become one. And then she touched my forehead. And everything shattered. I woke up on a park bench. At least, it looked like a park. The trees were frozen mid-sway. The grass didn't move when I touched it. The sky was painted gray. There was no sun, just a pale glow that felt artificial. I tried standing, but the air pushed back like water. In front of me, a path unfurled from nowhere. I followed it. The benches along the trail were all occupied by people with heads bowed, like they were sleeping. But when I leaned in closer, I saw they weren't asleep. They were repeating words, over and over, whispering like a broken record. One woman rocked in place, murmuring, He said he'd be back. He said he'd be back. A man held a burnt photo to his chest, whispering, It didn't happen. It didn't happen. All of them stuck, glitching, echoes. I was in the place Audrey had warned me about, the echo of a memory. But why was I still here? And then I saw it, a mirror standing alone in the middle of the path. I approached, and saw myself, except not the version I knew. This me was pale, sunken eyes, fingers stained with ink, clothes tattered and gray. It looked at me, and smiled. You're catching up, he said. What are you? I'm what's left when you forget who you were. He stepped through the glass like it was water. And now we were standing face to face. This place isn't for the living, I said. No, he replied. But neither is Audrey. I ran. The path twisted, shifted, looped back into itself like a snake swallowing its tail. I kept seeing the same tree, the same bench, the same whispering man, until finally, I saw her, Audrey, standing beside a door. Not an apartment door, not a shop, just a door, freestanding in the middle of the nothing. I kept it open for you, she said. I don't want this, I gasped. I don't want to stay. You followed me, she said. You remembered me. That was the trade. She stepped closer. You gave me form again. Thought is stronger than death. That's how this place exists. I shook my head. You used me. She flinched. No, she said. I didn't make you fall in love. She reached for my hand, and for once her skin was warm. I just didn't stop you. The door creaked open, and on the other side was my apartment. My real apartment. Lights on. Phone buzzing on the counter. Reality. I reached for it. Audrey grabbed my wrist. If you leave, she whispered, you'll forget me. I looked at her. The girl who haunted rooms with memories. Who wandered graveyards like she belonged there. Who never once asked to be saved. I'm sorry, I whispered, and stepped through the door. The world blinked. I was home. My phone vibrated with notifications. Emails. Missed calls. I was back. I breathed in, heavy, dizzy, alive. But something was wrong. In my reflection, my shirt read backward. My clock ticked in reverse. And on my phone, one new message. Welcome back. But which one are you now? I stared at the screen as dread built in my chest. I rushed to my bookshelf, flipped through photo albums. Half the faces were blurred. My name wasn't on my lease. I tried to call my parents. Disconnected. I looked in the mirror again, and the reflection stared back with black eyes. I wasn't out. I was in another version. Another echo. Somewhere close, but not real. And Audrey. She was there again, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking tea. You left the door open, she said, softly. I came home. She nodded. This one's close enough. I collapsed onto the floor. What do I do? I whispered. She walked over, sat beside me. There's one more door, she said. But it's not for me. I looked up. What do I have to do? Her eyes shimmered, almost human again. Remember who you were. All of it. And then she disappeared. Again, leaving behind the old brass key, the one that opened her door. I held it in my hand and felt something shift. My name, my memories, my truth, all of it bending. The apartment started to fade. The walls shimmered. Furniture evaporated. And I knew, if I didn't leave now, I'd become part of this place. Another version of me. Another echo stuck on repeat. I ran for the hallway. The last door stood waiting, and I prayed it still opened from this side. The hallway was endless. Each step echoed like it was swallowed by the walls. The doors I passed were all marked with names I didn't recognize. Or worse, names I did, but couldn't place. My childhood dog. A teacher I'd forgotten. A girl I used to know in college. All written on doorways that pulsed faintly in the dark, like veins. But I didn't stop. Not until I reached the end. There was no number on this final door. No name. Just a heavy, rotting slab of wood with a brass keyhole. The kind of door that hadn't been opened in a very, very long time. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Audrey's key. It fit. Of course it fit. But I hesitated. Because I knew what this was now. This wasn't just a way out. This was the way back to the truth, to the life I had before her. The one where coffee shops were just coffee shops, where mirrors behaved, and no one ever whispered from across the veil of death. If I turned the key, I'd lose her forever. Audrey, the girl with no past. The woman who existed only because I believed she did. I closed my eyes and turned the key. The world collapsed. Not violently, like pages ripping themselves out of a book, one by one. Each memory disintegrated. Our first conversation. Her touch. Her stories. Her laughter. Gone. 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 Until only one thing remained. The smell of smoke. I awoke in a hospital bed. My mother sat beside me, her face swollen from crying. Doctors told me I'd collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. They found me wandering the edge of the old cemetery, barefoot, mumbling about someone named Audrey. The name didn't ring any bells. Not to them. Not to me. Because when they asked who Audrey was, I realized I couldn't remember. Just a feeling. An ache in my chest that pulsed every time someone mentioned fire. Or old paper. Or the color of her eyes, which I also couldn't remember. Weeks passed. Life resumed. I went back to work. Saw friends. Ate dinner alone. Slept without incident. But sometimes, just before falling asleep, I'd feel a chill on the sheets beside me. Or see the corner of a brass key peeking from under the dresser. Or hear a soft click-clack, like a typewriter striking keys, even though I didn't own one. And sometimes, in the crowd, I saw a girl with auburn hair. But when I blinked, she was gone. One night, I found a letter slid under my door. No return address. No writing. Just a clipping. Old. Yellowed. The edges burnt. I unfolded it with shaking hands. It was an obituary. Unidentified male. Found deceased outside the ruins of the Marin building. Cause of death unknown. Estimated time of death, 2012. But the photo attached wasn't blurred this time. It was me, smiling, wearing the same clothes I had on that morning. My hands trembled. My breath caught. Because 2012 was 13 years ago, and I was 29, not 16. I dropped the clipping and staggered back. My mirror, across the room, began to fog from the inside. And on the glass, a message appeared, written by a finger I couldn't see. You made me real. And beneath it, now finish the story. I don't know what's real anymore. All I know is this. Audrey wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a dream. She was a story, a memory that refused to die. And I was her reader. I loved her. I remembered her. I wrote her into existence. And somewhere, maybe still in some broken pocket of this world, she's waiting. A coffee cup in her hands. A smile that doesn't belong to the living. And a seat across the table, still empty, waiting for me to sit down again.